to kick off, I'm gonna just pass the floor to Alex, and Alex is a senior VP who runs and heads up talent acquisition for DBS Bank, and he's gonna be covering how should any talent negotiate salaries. Now I'm gonna stop share and pass the floor to Alex while he gets ready. Now, Alex is no newcomer when it comes to talent acquisition. He has joined us and he's got extensive experience as a recruiter with big, well-known names, all right, and blue chip companies. So over to you, Alex, if you're ready to take it away.
Thank you very much, Eileen. Good afternoon, everybody. I think it's a little bit rainy and wet, so I hope you can hear me clearly. So how should any talent negotiate salaries? I think before we begin, take a look at this bar of iron, right? A bar of iron actually costs $5. Made into horseshoes, it's worth $12. Made into needles, it's worth $3,500. And made into balance springs for watches, it's actually worth $300,000, because you've heard of people owning $500,000, even $1 million watches. So can you imagine this bar of iron can actually be worth that much more? So you are worth what you make of yourself. But importantly, it is also how other people value you. With this in mind, how should you negotiate salary? Before we can answer that, we need some data. Let's look at what are the factors that actually determine your market worth, right? So how much of your skills are valued in this current climate is very important. The second area is demand of such skills and experience. And the third area is ability of companies to pay for such talent, right? Ultimately, you set your market worth when you are willing to accept the pay that a company is willing to pay. It is basically a done deal when your expectations and the company's offer intersect. It sounds very simple. Yes, no, I'm not sure. But let's do a quick poll now on this, right? Eileen, are you able to share that poll? Thanks.
Absolutely, I've just launched it. So
Okay.
everyone, you should be able to see this on screen. Oh, I see some quick fingers already started.
Yeah. Great.
Okay. Yeah, we've got over 200 of you on this call, and looks like the numbers are chalking up really fast. More than, 60% have already voted, Alex? Okay.
So it's quite heartening to see that there is a number of people who have said yes, which means that, you know, your recruiters or your compensation professionals have been doing the right job. But I think majority is in the could be better range, right? I think it's what someone did a happiness survey in Singapore before, and it actually resulted in, you know, people actually, majority are under happy. It's not that you're unhappy, you're just, you know, just before being happy. But so the main question is, for those who have answered no, remember the iron bar. Are you fully utilizing your potential? Are you making yourself valuable? And ultimately, how do you know you are being paid fairly? So to, okay.
Okay.
All right. So my next, okay, so how do you know you're being paid fairly, right? There are three ways of viewing your market worth. Your current worth, basically it's your current pay or your most recent pay, right? The second way is how much does the job itself pay? How much have you earned in the past if it's higher than your current pay? Because all these are relevant, and ultimately are these skills in demand or not? As I mentioned above, the intersection point of the above is number three, your market worth. How much company.
Sorry, I think Alex is on mute again.
Yeah, so sorry. Alex, just hang on.
Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, I just unmute. Where was I cut off at? Okay. Just run through that again. Your current worth is your current pay or your most recent pay. And your job worth, right? How much does the job pay? How much have you earned in the past if higher than your current pay? Are these skills in demand? These are the questions you probably need to ask yourself as well. As I mentioned above, the intersection point of the above is your market worth, number three. How much are companies willing to pay and candidates willing to accept? My fellow speaker, Genevieve, will be able to shed more light on this later with you, right? So do pay attention there. And so, to the main agenda, how should you negotiate salaries? Number one thing is do your research. Arm yourself with the market data. Look up the various salary surveys available online, PayScale, Glassdoor, Careers Future even, because the job postings state the salary ranges. Ask your friends who are willing to share or speak to other HR professionals or headhunters for their views. Understand how different industry pays for the same role. Is your experience relevant to the job you are applying to in relation to both domain and skills? Because it's very difficult to be asking for more pay if you don't have that domain or the skill set that the company is looking at. So we need to be realistic, right? Most companies will just use your current salary as your market worth. Hence the need for them to ask for your salary details. Over time, companies have collected such pay data across all the candidates and roles that they hire for, and they build up their company salary ranges. And that is also how HR consulting companies build up their data. Of course, they do conduct market surveys as well. However, increasingly, companies are designing salary packages around the job specifically. For example, for a sales role, the design is geared towards sales revenue and other related KPIs like customer retention and customer satisfaction. What is not so easy to determine, perhaps, would be engineering salaries, where the lack of talent in a particular country or region will cause salary levels to be higher. For example, cloud computing engineers today would command a higher salary than a network engineer, as the advent of smart switches and routers have reduced the need for networking jobs. But at the same time, the need to transform an organization to be more cloud-based has generated a large number of cloud computing jobs. Again, the iron bar example is your skill in demand. Are you shaped into something that the market is asking for? Plan to develop yourself and build up your experience to increase your value. So when you are speaking to a recruiter or a company and you're at the negotiation table, right? What usually do you think is the number one question that all recruiters or HR will ask you here in Singapore? What do you think that is, right? It's what is your current and expected salary? Please provide the breakdown. I've seen that in many emails, in many conversations. So the number one answer is, should you answer it, right? It really depends. Because if you go back to what I was saying earlier, most companies ask for your salary, your current salary, as it's a very convenient way to ascertain if you are the right caliber of candidate they are seeking. As it is true that if someone values you that much in the past, it is probably because you are good at what you do, hence the pay. So yes, you can say yes and provide the data if you are confident that you are already paid the market median based on your research or more, right? So you should provide that data, as it will help bolster your credibility from a leveling perspective, and also ensure that you will not be paid any less than that. Of course, you may be also keen on a company and that the job salary is secondary, because you could be very experienced, but you want to just do something that's different. In that case, you may want to ask the companies to give you an indicative range so that you can openly tell them that you do not want to price yourself out of the market. And if they do press you for it, you could share with them the data with the caveat that you are open to the same or even less as you are keen on the job. So if you think you may risk not getting the job, then it may be best to say that you are willing to consider all offers, right? And what do recruiters refer to? Because aside from the question about what is your current pay, very often you get the question, what is your expected salary, right? So let me give you an insight into what recruiters reference, right? So the other thing I wanted to mention is, whoever mentions salary first is in the weaker position. It's just food for thought for you to think about. But if you look at what recruiters actually reference, you might realize that it may not be as important, okay? Because what recruiters like myself look at, right, which may surprise you, is not only your current pay, right? In fact, it's your market worth and the internal equity that is actually more important, as they do not want to create internal equity issues. Hence, there will be a pay range that companies will adhere to. That does not mean that you can't be asking for something higher than what they are willing to pay, but it's important that you do not rock the boat, so to speak. So why are expectations actually not as relevant, even though a lot of recruiters also ask that? That is because I think the recruiters also want to see whether are you being realistic. So, and the reason why recruiters and companies actually don't really take into account your expectations is because they do know that some candidates can be unrealistic and they're asking is just way above the market, right? Similarly, it is interesting to note that you do not have to be worried if the job is paying way more than what you expect, as recruiters will still pay you a reasonable market salary, so you will not be worse off given the comparators they make with the internal equity and the market ranges. Because if you come in at a lower salary band than your peers, I think morale would be affected, your own personal morale. So recruiters will make sure that you are fairly compensated. All said, you can still decline and say no to the salary question if you suspect the job can pay you significantly more than what you are drawing. It is okay to decline and ask the recruiter instead to state the pay range the company would like to offer for the job. If they press you for the information, you might want to turn the question around and ask, why does it matter to them how much you are being paid? Because it gives you a chance to understand the rationale, and it may also give you an opportunity to decide whether do you want to answer it or not. So, like as per my earlier slide, it's basically, ultimately, it's about who blinks first. Are you willing to compromise, or is it a hard number? Same for employers. They have to decide if you are worth what you are asking for. Very often, they would have an idea of how much they are willing to pay. So be open, be flexible about it, as this could be your dream job, and other factors that are more important than just salary. So ask yourself, is this your dream job? Are you willing to compromise, right? Let's do another poll, right? Because I think this part would be very important. It gives you an idea of what are your priorities, right? And it might give you different reasons for saying yes to a job.
So I've launched the poll, Alex.
Thank you. And most importantly, what is yours?
Yep, everybody should be able to see this. I think we've got some really quick fingers. More than 40% have already voted and cast their choice. I see quite a close tussle between. No, I think there's something else that comes out really interesting. Okay, over 160 of you have voted. Are there more?
Yep, 80% now. So it's interesting to note that work-life balance is leading the charge here, right? It shows that people's priorities have changed. In the old days, some people would tell you salary would have been number one, right? But it's good and nice to see that, important things like work-life balance, a good boss, career progression. Some people like a fantastic pantry like what Facebook or Google has, right? So the work environment is important. There are surprisingly, people who do want to work for a very reputable company. The company reputation is important. And even job title, because what you value from one person to the next is really very different. So you must remember, it's what do you value, okay? So I'm gonna stop share here. And so I think we had a number of questions that came in also earlier, and I want to just maybe, preemptively address some questions. Common questions like, do candidates have any bargaining power? Absolutely, especially if you have in-demand skills. Secondly, it depends on the circumstances, especially during this period of time. Do you need the job now? Use data to back yourself up when negotiating, right? So, answer to that question is yes, you do have bargaining power. Is it advisable to state a salary range? As per my earlier slide, it depends, right? But my personal recommendations is yes. And you give a range that includes the highest pay that you have gotten before, because it shows the breadth of your experience. If you've done it before, chances are you would be able to achieve it again. And also it would have shown the recruiter or the company that you've done your market research to show that, basically you're being reasonable, because this is the market range that you worked out. So do state a range. What are the must-dos? As I said, must-do is, do your research, understand the job. Are you really able to do it? Is this 100% home run? That sort of thing. Take time to think through the offer. That's very important, because impulsive decisions are usually not the best. I've seen, unfortunately, too many times when people take up another job only to turn around and say, is the company willing to take me back, etc., and all that. I think all of you all may have heard of friends or even yourself go through that personal journey, right? Although, if you are the kind of person who's willing to accept the consequences of your actions, then go for it. Nobody said being quick on your feet is wrong, right? And this other question is interesting. What can job seekers negotiate? I'm the kind of guy that will say almost everything, right? Although some companies can be quite adamant about it, you can certainly negotiate things like leave, transport allowance, mobile phone allowances. Although these days most companies will tell you that they have worked that into your pay already, and again it boils down to what you are willing to accept. Working hours also is another thing that doesn't apply so much given the current situation, and most workplaces I know practice flexible working hours, but that too is something that you could negotiate. And with this COVID situation, location also has become something that people could potentially negotiate. So your work location is, because most companies now allow people to work from home. But the flip side is one extreme case in a company that I worked for before. We had one employee where literally took work from home very literally, and worked from his home country because he was a foreigner. He actually went back to his home country and worked from there. So that's taking it a little bit to the extreme. But I think it gives you an idea of how flexible today's work environment can be, right? So I think if you have any other questions, please post them on the chat, and I will hand the floor back to Eileen and let the other speakers take this ahead.
I think that was a very quick question asking you to repeat what you said about, if they are being forced to answer the question, what's your expected salary? Because you mentioned, the anchoring effect, whoever speaks first loses, yeah.
If it is already late in the process, as in you've already gone through the interview, there is been a lot of discussion, you should also yourself have an idea of what the job pays. You can just stick to say, this is my expected salary. It shouldn't matter what I was paid in the past. Only in Singapore, it's not yet illegal to ask for salary, and that's why we have this situation. It's something that the US and Europe has already moved away from, where they don't actually ask you for that pay data. So it is, but like I said, they use it as a data point. So depending on your confidence level, right, you can tell them, I will give it to you, but if you just give me a 10% on top of what I made before, it's not going to excite me, to be very honest, right? And they want to hire you, so they should be making a compelling offer, and it shouldn't matter how much you make, and that's really the stand. So the yes no depends really is circumstantial. Basically, what is the situation? What is the context? Regulated industries tend to ask for it. Banks, telcos, government, because it is just one data point they use to ascertain whether are they hiring the right talent. So it is not an easy question to answer actually, because there will be recruiters that would just say, will my chances be affected if I don't give my salary? The truth is no. I've hired so many people without ever knowing their last drawn pay. So don't be afraid, because again, it's a confidence thing, right? And
Okay.
definitely speak to a friendly headhunter or somebody like that who will give you advice.
I like the descriptor friendly. I think there's only one quick one, because I thought rather than keep it to the end, Alex, you mentioned internal equity. So what is that? There was a question in the chat.
Okay, that's something that I believe Genevieve will be touching on.
Yeah.
So I won't steal her thunder too much. I've already covered quite a bit. So, but in short, it's basically how much your colleagues are being paid, right? Because a company will be shooting themselves in the foot if they have too much imbalance internally. Yeah, and
okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Alex, for sharing that. And what we want.
Sorry,
yes.
there was just one more question I noticed.
Go
if
ahead.
you had taken a contract role that is lower than your highest drawn, like I said, give them a range. Tell them that you've earned that much before in the past, and it's just that because of circumstances you've taken on a temporary role, that it's not paying you as much. I think most recruiters, if not all, will use that as a data point.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, so I'm gonna ask. So thank you so much, Alex, for that. But stay with us, because there are more questions in Menti.com as well, and the code for Menti.com for those of you.